Cybersecurity is one of those issues that you don't need to worry about it until right before you need to worry about it, but by then it's too late. And I was introduced by one of our favorite attorneys in Florida, Samantha, who we had on our podcast last week, introduced me to IT Fusion and Matt Kinsey. And we had a chance to talk a little bit about cybersecurity as it relates to law firms in particular. And so I thought I would just take a chance to record it and share it with you. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, glad to be here, Bill.
In IT Fusion, you guys are a company that does both computer IT services for law firms, and then you do cybersecurity work for multiple industries, correct?
Yeah, we cover multiple industries, but more than half of our clients are in the legal space, either law firms or title companies. Quite often, those title companies are attorney owned.
One of the things people don't realize is how pervasive this is. Just last week, one of the nation's largest title companies, Fidelity National Title, which also means numerous other title companies and customers of theirs and vendors of theirs, was affected by a major cybersecurity incident that shut down their email was shut down for a week at least, not to mention transactions. Do you have any more details on what happened with Fidelity as far as the any damage done or any reports on that?
We're still gathering information and the forensics is still ongoing, but my understanding is it started as most emails do with a phishing email. And what is a phishing email? It's like it's dangling a hook out there for the fish to grab onto. So we call it phishing with a PH, and it's getting you to click on a link that you shouldn't click on because it looks like it belongs to a legitimate website. And then they use that to gain access to your email, to gain access to your computer. And then in this case, they use that to be able to put ransomware on there, which, locks the system down. You can't access your files. And then because of the industry they're in, they're required to notify all of their customers. And it's the right thing to do anyway, but legally they're required to notify anybody who might be affected. And they're going to have to purchase, most likely going to have to purchase credit. There's probably going to be a class action lawsuit, I would imagine. And there's reputational harm.
I think the thing that customers don't realize is how pervasive this is. Fidelity has multiple brands that you may not be aware of related to them. And then they also underwrite for other title companies that you may not be aware. They do closing services. And then, like for me, I'm a realtor who does business with them. In some ways, it's kind of like a virus in that since now I did a transaction with them, I had opened a deal with them a year ago that closed last week. Well, I've dropped them as a customer, but because I had the open transaction with them, I'm still interacting with them. My emails could be theoretically infected from a security point of view. And then every customer I do business with theoretically could be infected as well. Because obviously what these people do is they find one person where they're successful and they use that to find other avenues of attack. So what can I do?
Additionally, Bill, if I may, they've got personally identifiable information about you and anyone you did a transaction with. So, and that includes very sensitive data such as an employer's salary information, social security numbers. There's a lot of data there that a title company has access to that's legally required for them to complete their transaction, or whether it's legally required or whether the financial institution requires it. And so now they've got the ability to do identity theft on a large basis.
The most sensitive information, your banking and routing information when they wire you money. Yep. Statement of identity. To get title insurance, you have to give them the most intimate information you have. And they have that on all their customers. They have that on their branded customers. They have that on customers that they're underwriting. It's just never ending how deep this potentially could go. And you have to imagine if they're strong enough to shut down your system and ransomware they must have the ability to access the data individually, right?
Yeah, and without knowing the details of how Fidelity's databases are set up and whether they're encrypted properly or not, it's hard to say. But once you got access to the data, then you've got the most valuable resource, which is time. Right. So if it's encrypted, the more time you have, the more chance you're going to be able to break that encryption because now you've got the data. So because they've got the time to do that, when you're trying to get into a system and work on that system, then that's a big challenge because you're fighting the clock. If you extract the data, you've got time.
I think I would make three assumptions. You tell me if these are correct. One most companies don't do what they're supposed to do to prevent these kinds of losses of their customers.
Yeah, I like the term many, but it may be a majority. I'm not sure, but many companies do not. I
Right.
completely agree.
Right. The executives will protect their own bank accounts, but your information, they're going to get to it when they get a chance to get to it. So number one.
Absolutely.
Number two, all encryption is breakable. The question is just how much resources the bad guys will put on breaking the encryption. But by definition, it's all breakable.
Uh, until we have some advances in technology in the quantum space, yes. And there's the potential, we don't know if it's going to happen or not, that quantum computing could create theoretically unbreakable encryption. But every encryption standard we've got today, it's just a matter of how much time it takes to decrypt that data.
Right. So three, I think you should live your life assuming your data is posted on the internet despite your best efforts. Like you just better assume that's true and then take appropriate security based on that. And what do I mean by that? I think it's the equivalent of you better live your life as though your front door is unlocked, whatever that means to you,
Yeah.
right? You have to hide things or secure things or protect yourself because you have to assume people have your information. Like you better watch your bank accounts, you better watch activity, you better watch charges on your credit cards and manage your business in a way that is efficient. Otherwise, you're going to discover at the end of a month, somebody's made off with all the money they could out of that account.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's it's a real challenge. And every week just about we see another organization that's had a breach. I mean, there was a recent breach for a large medical company that had to shut down MRIs. They couldn't do MRIs for, I believe it was like 2 to 3 weeks.
Oof.
Even one of their major sub companies. So I mean, this is putting people's lives at jeopardy, not just financial is
Right.
damaging enough. But
Right.
now you've got people who need an MRI so they can go get a procedure done, and they can't get an MRI because the company is shut down. And some of these firms go after hospitals. Just think about that. You're in a hospital in the middle of surgery, and they ransomware your systems, and they can't monitor you properly. These are the types of things that are happening. Some of the hacker groups will not go after hospitals because of that very reason, but many of them will.
Now that you say this, I realize I was also at the company I'm with had our national convention in Vegas at a casino that was also ransomware. The reason why we couldn't check in remotely, I kept thinking, why is that? Because their system was attacked. And by
Yeah.
definition, I had already registered with them. They already had my credit card. They already had my home address, my phone number. So those guys could have all my information. And I now realize the title company do this with and the hotel I stayed at recently, both were hacked.
And in that case, in the hotel, that was accomplished through what we call social engineering.
Hmm.
So somebody called in and said, "Hey, I'm so and so who is an IT administrator. I need to reset my password." And they didn't validate the identity, and they reset the password, and now somebody logged on who had administrative privileges. So
Wow.
they were able to bypass a lot of the standard security that a normal user would have, because they now had the keys to the kingdom.
It is a
And
company, it was a multi-billion-dollar, multi-site,
Mhm.
hotel industry player.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So that's what we try to help our customers with. One is education. If you don't know what the threats are, you can't work to combat them. Secondly is awareness, and making sure they're aware, and what to look for. So we do security awareness training, and test people and send out fake phishing emails and see if people click on them. And we want to make sure that we're keeping you reasonably secure, so that the casual cyber criminal, not the guy who's determined to get into your system, but the casual cyber criminal is going to go, "I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on because these guys are set up pretty well, and it's not worth my time to go after them." And it's kind of, it's sound, but it's the same as your house. I mean, you can make your house super secure, okay? And people do that. They'll put all sorts of motion sensors and sound sensors and lights and everything else. For most people, two locks, a ring camera is going to deter the average criminal
Right.
who doesn't know what you have. Now, if they know you've got a Rembrandt hanging on your wall, well, then you need to take more action because they're going to be super determined to get in there
Right.
to try to steal that Rembrandt, which hopefully you don't. I mean, I'm not sure I would do that. That would be pretty risky.
We don't have a Rembrandt in my house.
Okay,
I should say any Rembrandts we did have, we took down and put away.
there you go.
So,
All right,
so
Bill.
one of the mistakes I think that companies make is, I should say, one of the positive things is you want to have your key skills, your key core competencies developed in-house. When I was ran a
Yeah.
real estate company as a general manager, we were always hiring brand new people, developing them both on the administrative side, developing on the sales side. Those were key competencies. Our key competency was not cybersecurity or IT. And so that's something that we would always want to contract out because we want to get state-of-the-art services, but we didn't have the advantages to bring that to date. You must find companies that either with the security piece or the IT administrative piece, their bias is to do it in-house, yet they're probably better served by working with an independent third party like yourself.
Yeah, and we work with a lot of clients, and it doesn't have to be an either or, it can be an and. So we work with a lot of clients in the and situation where there's somebody in-house who takes care of, in some cases, they take care of the day-to-day stuff. And then we take care of the larger stuff. In some companies, we're taking care of the day-to-day stuff. And they're taking care of the value driving portion of the business. And
Right,
they're working on the big projects. So it just
right,
depends. Each company is different on where they need support. So, you've got an in-house person who is going to go on vacation, is going to get sick, is going to leave at some point, most likely. You've got a fully outsourced where they're a little hands off, hands off from the day-to-day operations of the business, and they don't have the relationships across multiple layers of the business,
right.
like a co-managed environment does. And then some companies say, hey, let's take the best of both and let's do a co-managed, and then we figure that out. So but the point about working on your core competencies is really important, and what's driving value for your business.
Right.
And I think every business owner has to decide these are things we have to do to keep the lights on. These are things we'd like to do, and these are the things that, are producing real value for our business.
Right.
And the more time you spend in the value producing and the less time you spend as a business owner in the keep the lights on stuff,
Right.
I think, at least my experience says that the more money you're going to make at the end of the day and the more value you're going to produce for your end customer, end client.
Famously, I think Keller Williams, Compass are two companies that kind of announced that they're going to make their core competency technology. And the problem is in real estate, there's such competition outside any individual company. That's not the place to put your energies on. I always felt the important thing were great administrative staff and great sales staff. And if we won those battles, we could always afford to pay somebody to do good stuff on the outside.
Yeah.
How often is a security problem a person who's inside the company? How often is it the IT guy at the company or some other executive who's disgruntled or feels passed over or cheated?
On average, a majority of incidents are internally created. Now that could be because of lack of awareness, that they clicked on that link. So it started on the outside, but if they hadn't clicked on the link, the person never would have gotten that. It depends on the industry and the reputational risk, and the area is what we call data loss prevention. And that is one of those areas that a lot of companies don't see. And so large companies, like engineering companies that have proprietary CAD drawings, they protect those because there's value in that. And there's governments that want that. There's other competitors that want that. So they understand. But even something simple like a customer list, think about the value of a customer list or a prospect list could have to one of your competitors. And if they can get that list, there's value there. And so that's the type of stuff that I think walks out of the store more often, or out of the company more often, is that data loss. You lose a salesperson, they take their Rolodex.
Right.
Ooh, okay.
Well, that could be an or it could be
That's
it might be the
and there's some
Rolodex.
legitimate reasons for that, but
Yeah.
you know, um, non-competes are kind of out of favor with the courts, but non-solicitations are very much in favor with the courts. It's
Right.
like, okay, I'm not going to keep you from doing business, but you can't call on the people you were calling on here, unless there's some kind of contractual arrangement like attorneys will do. Hey, I'm turning over, I'm leaving, I'm taking them with them, and then the attorneys come to some kind of agreement. That's pretty standard in that industry. So you just want to make sure you're above board. But that data loss prevention is a lot of the inside loss of value to a company that I see.
Now, I'll share a cute story. I was a general manager of a good sized real estate company. When I left, the owner became very victimy, he was just like a high school girl who was left by his boyfriend and harassed me, I think, and legally harassed me and accused me of stealing the company database. I said, well, even though I manage the database of the company, the only database I have is my own.
Right.
And in my own database was a couple company employees because they work for me, they're my colleagues. And legally, I'm allowed to do that.
Right.
And including was the company accountant because I'd met him. And
Yeah.
as a salesperson, I'm allowed to solicit people I meet. But they
Yeah.
accused me of stealing the whole database. So I said, well, I don't have it. I said, here's what we'll do. We found a third party. He had a big law firm. They had a forensic accountant. I said,
Mhm.
I'll submit my database. You submit yours. And let's see how much overlap, if any, there is. Because I knew I only had 6,000. I knew the database he had 100,000 in it. I knew I had stolen it. So I was just waiting to see, like, how much overlap is there? What are we really talking about? I didn't even know. The forensic accounting company sends me back the findings, but what they did was they did an Excel spreadsheet that hid the full database and just showed the overlaps. But the unhiding was as simple as just right-clicking on unhide. So they sent me, in essence, the exact thing they accused me
Oh,
of stealing. This was a forensic accounting company out of Washington, D.C., very high price.
yeah.
I'm sure hundreds of dollars an hour, $500 an hour or so.
Yeah.
And I emailed the guy back. I said, you literally sent me the exact thing you've accused me of stealing. You've been litigating now for
Right.
90 days. What the heck is wrong with you? And now I will say I used it to torture my former employer because he was really an SOB. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, he'd write me a check for a good chunk of money for the
Yeah.
time to clean up the database and
Yeah.
my broker and an IT guy. It
Mhm.
was a very expensive mistake. And so I think sometimes the moral of the story sometimes is that there's no security that's going to cover up for bad business practices.
Right.
And there's no security that's going to cover up for bad people. But
Yeah.
at the same time, good people still need to take proper precautions
Oh,
and
absolutely.
use good people to do the job, I think.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of well-meaning people out there that just don't realize. And there was a guide on the dark web. So what we call the dark web is that's the part of the web that you don't see as an average user. It's hidden behind logins. It's hidden behind the Tor network, which is called the Onion router, which is another protocol, not HTTP, which is what we see. And so that's stuff that's hidden on the web, and they sell information on you. They sell user IDs and passwords and everything else. And so you've got to be aware that that stuff is out there as you're working through and keep awareness of it. And so there are people who are well-meaning that just do dumb things because they're not aware of the threats that are out there. And if we can help them, then we're going to reduce the chance that you're going to get a breach.
Yeah.
And so, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, has a framework that goes through, 5 areas of cybersecurity, which, starts with, it's awareness. You got to know what's out there. You got to be able to detect it. You've got to be able to protect it. You got to be able to recover from it. So I'm not going to go through all of it, but there's 5 areas, and that's what we and most cybersecurity companies follow that or a similar framework to make sure that we cover all of the areas of security so that we can try and the most important is that end user. They're the weakest link in that, just like they're the weakest link in you can have the best process in the world, and if somebody doesn't follow it, things going to slip through the crack.
Well, you have to have your users have access to the system. That's what it's designed for.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if they misuse it, you're really in a world of hurt. It strikes me all the time. My wife will come to me with phishing emails or texts, like from a bank. And occasionally, you get one from 80 different banks, and you finally get one from your real bank. And every time she comes to me, is this legitimate? Well, no. Why would they send you anything? What did you do?
Most banks will not do anything like that. The banks have taught you, the IRS is not going to send you an email saying, go get Walmart cards to pay your, pay your outstanding invoice.
Yeah,
A legitimate credit collector is not going to ask you to go buy cards,
right,
and they're going to explain the bill, and they're not
right.
going to hang up on you if you start questioning them about it. So just think,
Microsoft's not going to call you to offer you technical assistance.
yeah. Oh, I love wasting their time.
I love it too. I love it. Now, if I have the time, I
Yeah.
love playing with those guys. There's
Yeah.
whole websites. I don't know if you follow
Yeah,
YouTube channels of guys who do these for hours. Oh, I love that.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I get it. And they're generating some, they've got the time on their hand, and they're getting enough followers, they're generating some revenue from YouTube on it.
Yeah,
And but what many people think of as a hacker, which is the guy in the hoodie in his mom's basement, is not the modern hacker. The modern hacker, these cyber criminals, if you walked into their office, you would think it was a call center
right.
for a major company. It could be an Amazon call center. I mean, for all you know, walking in, they've got supervisors, they've got human resource departments, they've got salaries, they've got bonus systems. I mean, they run like a company, and they operate as a company. It's just that their purpose is to get money out of you through illegitimate means, rather than to get money out of you for goods and services that provide benefit to you.
And that's who you're competing with. That's who you're fighting against. So you have to make sure
Yeah.
you're not engaged in a battle with those people. You have to stay off the radar as best you can.
Yeah, and I get a thrill when I'm like, we stopped one.
Nice.
That's my juice for the day. When I'm like, okay, yep, someone tried to do something, and we stopped the phishing email, we stopped somebody from clicking on a link that wasn't supposed to be there, we stopped the software from running that would have done something bad. That's when our bell goes off. I've seen a lot of real estate agents, anytime someone gets a deal, they ring the bell. That's when we ring the bell. We stop somebody.
Nice. Nice. Well, look, Matt, I can talk about this. Obviously, a topic I enjoy. I
Yeah.
started out of college in aerospace and defense and computers, and find it fascinating. You're servicing both law firms as far as IT support and cybersecurity of companies throughout the enterprise. What's a typical company that's hiring you for cybersecurity as a consultant? What do they typically look like?
Yeah,
Size of the company?
our two biggest markets are law firms and CPAs, because their business requirements are very similar. They've got sensitive data. So I know you work extensively with probate and trust, and that's an area we've got several customers there, family law, several, even personal injury. So we got a lot of attorneys, CPAs. They're typically, or quite often, they've got some kind of either industry or federal compliance standard that they need to meet. So real estate law firms have to meet FTC safeguards. And so we go in, the first thing we do is we do a level 1 assessment. It's totally complimentary. And we just say, here's where you're at, here's things that need to get addressed. And then we'll put together an action plan to address them. And, hopefully they decide to do business with us. But if not, at least they're more educated. They understand what they need to get addressed, and they can find somebody who better meets their needs if we're not the one who's going to best meet their needs, but at least they're more educated. And typically they're, from a business owner perspective, they're people who I find they tend to make decisions quickly and change them slowly. That's one of those psychographic profile pieces. And they're concerned about security, not just from oh, this is something I have to do, but they see the value it produces in the level of reduction of risk to their business. And that's really what the security game is all about. It's about risk reduction and risk management for an organization.
Well, somebody who couldn't check into his hotel because of one company's cybersecurity issues, and then not able to close a transaction for an extra week on the other hand, and who knows what goes on in the future. We all need to take a look at our security, get ourselves buttoned up and tightened up.
Absolutely.
Matt Kinsey, IT Fusion, itfusiontech.com is the website. Under you have a phone number, 561-403-0301. I'll put the info down in the description. Matt, thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I felt well educated as a result of talking to you today.
Thanks, Bill. I really appreciate your time too. And everyone out there, stay safe on the internet.
Thanks so much.